Yo, 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 people and patrons of the night, it is your boy, the Horror Lander, and today I'm going to be talking about the last of the triple threat modern kids horror books to come out in this month of August, which I'll have the digital cover pop up for, but I do have the physical special hardcover edition here available for me, which is the book Cave by Tim Curran. Now, this book, sorry for the glare, I got that a little bit in the setup, but Cave by Tim Curran is effectively the fifth Weird House Press kids horror book to come out. This one is not available on Amazon yet for public order, but it is available on Weird House Press if you want to order one of the deluxe hardcovers, which is what I did. I just decided to pull the trigger and get one. As you can see, it has cool artwork here. The artwork is done by M. Wayne Miller. And it's a pretty high quality book overall. I like the artwork on here. I like the built-in bookmark. It's got like a green ribbon to fit the theme. This one is signed, so I can show that as well. Here, by Cave, by Tim Curran. You see his signature down over there. And it's got some cool artwork. There's some interior artwork, I'll show in just a few moments, but if I pull back this wraparound, I just show it like this, you have a little like mural, really cool mural done by M. Wayne Miller as well. This is sick. I love this artwork showing Sidra, the main character in the Triassic. It's a scene from the book. And also, even though you have this little wraparound cover, of course, for M. Wayne Miller, the actual book itself comes with this really cool shiny green cave. If I point it in this direction, you can kind of see the reflections. So really sick. It's a really high quality book overall. So aesthetically, it's very pleasing. And as for the story, that's what we'll get into now. So, Cave by Tim Curran. What is so special about this book, and what's so special about Weird House Press? Well, the thing about Weird House Press is these guys have been the best modern kids horror books that have come out to me. Now, they're not a kids horror publisher. They're basically an underground adult horror company, a publisher that does a lot of like weird horror fiction, like Lovecraftian stuff. And the reason I found out about them is not because of their other stuff, but because they were the main publisher for my favorite horror author of all time, which is Tim Curran. Now, Tim Curran I discovered like closer to like 2 years ago, more than a year ago, and I ended up reading some of his stories and I fell in love with his work. He's done adult horror fiction for about 28 years of his career. He's an underground guy, but you know, I read a lot of fantastic works by him. I read his short story collections, which I love, like Horrors of War, Atomic Horrors, Alien Horrors 1 and 2. I read his Dead Sea and Dead Sea Chronicles books. A lot of his short stories I bought, you know, out of print short stories by him, and I've read pretty much like 98 to 99% of his work, over 200 of his short stories in just about a couple years. So I became fanatic about his stuff. The reason I love his stuff is because he has like cinematic action quality to his books. It feels like you're watching a movie rather than slugging through a book. Cinematic action horror sequences. He's the creature feature master. He's amazing when it comes to making monsters, all different types of threats that you can imagine. He almost seems to like never run out of ideas. And he has like a fun quality to it. Like, yeah, he's got really scary, hair-raising scenes, really graphic stuff, bloody, gory action. But at the same time, it's meant to be fun because this guy grew up on EC Comics and a lot of fun monster stuff. So he was just a guy that I wanted to see get into the kids' horror ring. And I found Weird House Press through him. And I found out that they were doing kids' horror books. So far, they've had 4 kids horror books that I read, and these are some of the best kids horror books of all time to me, especially the Sleepy Hollow Gang and I Scream You Scream. I love these books. I think they're fantastic. I think they elevate the kids horror subgenre and do amazing things. So when I found out that he's coming out with Cave, his first ever kids horror debut, I was super excited for it. I promoted it a lot. And just to get into my general, I guess, feelings about it, since this is going to be me kind of unloading on the book and talking about different things, I have to say, unfortunately, Cave by Tim Curran ended up being disappointing to me. Now, for a first-time reader of his stuff, you might enjoy it. If you're not familiar with the kids' horror subgenre, you might still think this is a good book. Again, everyone's entitled to their opinion. This is not a bad book. It has good moments to it. It has fun aspects to it. It is a decent book overall. I give it like a 7.4 out of 10, decent, but that's about the cap for it, because the reason why I wanted him to get into this stuff is that he could translate over his talents from the horror genre with those cinematic action horror sequences, the creature feature mastery, the immersive atmosphere and setting that he does, the level of passion and world building that he incorporates into his stories. I wanted him to bring all that over to this book. And unfortunately, he didn't do that. He kind of did a sloppy job with it. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what the plot is. It's quite a simple plot, and then get into the positives about it, and then just kind of go into why this book let me down as a longtime fan of his. Do I want him to stop doing kids horror and say that, hey, it's not fit for you? No, I think that he can do a good job. I think there's potential for a second attempt, third attempt, more attempts down the line. I think he can do it, but he just needs to refine his stuff. But I'm definitely not gonna lie. Even though he's my favorite guy, I have to be honest. So without further ado, let's get into the review portion of Cave by Tim Curran. So the plot is quite simple. You open up with this 14-year-old girl named Sidra. She wakes up in this remote jungle, kind of multi-terrain place, very hot, very humid, and she starts to recollect from her memories how she got here and what led up to this moment. And it's the fact that she is from the future, the far future. And in the far future, there has been this sort of worldwide problem, this apocalyptic kind of situation spreading across the earth, which is that there's been a lot of drought and famine and disease spreading across the earth, especially in certain sections. And because of that, weather phenomenon have been going crazy. There's tornadoes and tsunamis and hurricanes and earthquakes popping up everywhere. So people's lives are getting lost. Millions of people are getting killed out there just due to these natural disasters and natural problems going on. And there's been these sort of like anarchist movements, these uprisings, these rebellions where, you know, the age of future and science and all this technology has kind of been reverting back in certain places to like medieval age of superstition and stuff like that, just because of all the, you know, drought and famine and disasters that have been happening. And the place where Sidra lives is a place where this has been happening. So her dad is kind of giving her like a pep talk, kind of prepped her that, hey, in case things get bad where we live, my plan is to teleport you over to the other side of the globe where your aunt is living, and your aunt will be able to take care of you. She has like a cabin up by a snowy area closer to the North Pole. You can spend time with her, and you're going to have to mature. You're going to have to become the woman of the household, taking care of your younger brother. So, you know, Sidra's ready for this, but at the same time, she doesn't expect that it'll come up on her soon. She's afraid of teleporting, which in their world is called jaunting. Now, jaunting is a reference to the Stephen King short story, which I read before. It's a really good short story called The Jaunt. It's from, I think, a short story collection called Skeleton Crew. She's afraid of jaunting because she's heard about all the different things, the rumors about what can go wrong if you jaunt and teleport. Some people end up with like extra limbs. Some people end up missing limbs. You know, things go bad. But her dad reassures her that this is all superstition. You guys will be fine when the day comes. And eventually the day comes, they get teleported and jaunted over, except there's a problem. She has now been sent to this remote place, and she doesn't know where her brother is. She thinks her brother might be lost out in this jungle, humid terrain. She suspects that maybe he did get to the aunt's place, you know, properly, or maybe he got sent somewhere else. There's a lot of uncertainty regarding where she is and where her brother is. And she eventually finds out after some time that she has ended up in the Triassic. That's right, she's ended up in the Triassic many, many, many millions of years ago in prehistoric history. And now she has to effectively find a way to survive, because the likelihood of people finding out where she got sent back in time, the exact location that she is going to be damn near impossible. But she holds out hope. She holds out the idea that things can get better. And she has to look for her brother, because the idea of her brother not being safe is very much a situation. And as the story goes on, she starts learning how to survive. It's a very man versus wild, Bear Grylls kind of thing. Also like the movie Send Help, which came out this year. that type of survival situation, like Hunger Games meets Jurassic Park, that kind of thing. She of course encounters a lot of prehistoric threats out there. I'll show some of the interior artwork that I talked about earlier. This is some of the pages done by M. Wayne Miller. It's some of the artwork sprinkled throughout the book. And effectively, she has to learn how to survive, how to fend for herself, and hope that she can find her brother Rye and get out of here safely, praying that there's going to be somebody who some way can end up finding her. Because even though this is a freak accident could also mean that a freak miracle could happen at the same time. So that's effectively the plot. It's very simple, and you sort of see how the story plays out. So let's get into my thoughts about the book, because there's a lot to unpack. Move the camera over this side because that window is going to get bright with the sunlight. But yeah, effectively the main things about this story that I would say are positives that bring it to that decent range, especially for the kids horror subgenre, is the main character Sidra is definitely the most capable kids horror protagonist that we've seen in the subgenre. I mean, the shit that this girl goes through is crazy. She has to effectively go through so many physical, mental, and emotional obstacles with this whole survival situation. She's from the far future. She's sheltered. She has to learn how to find shelter, make shelter. She has to learn how to get food. She has to study the different animals to learn their behavior and find out how she can survive. She has to try to look for her brother Rye, at the same time keeping emotional hope that she's going to be saved, that she's going to be able to find her brother, that he's still alive by this point. And at the same time, she has to be mentally smart, because at any point she can injure herself and she's not going to get any medical help. And also at the same time, there are prehistoric predators that are hunting her and treating her as exotic prey. So it very much is super realistic in terms of the things that she kind of has to go through. Yes, it is exaggerated for fiction, but you get to see that struggle. You get to see that depressing side of beating the odds and doing all those things. So there's definitely nobody more capable than her. There's points in the book where she's killing dinosaurs and killing prehistoric threats, having to fend for herself. The main villain, which is this apex predator dinosaur that you see on the cover of the book, she nicknames Demon because she first meets it when it's like late night and she's in a cave that she found and set up a base in, and she hears something walking around there down below her, below the cave, because the cave's like 15 feet above the ground, or like 20 feet above the ground up high. She hears something moving down there, something skulking down there, breaking down trees, roaring and growling. And when she looks down there, because it's, many hundreds of millions of years ago, and the moon moves a little bit farther away from the earth each year by year, the moon here, the full moon, is like twice the size of the full moon that we see in the modern age, maybe even like 3 times the size, because she's from the distant future. But the huge full moon basically illuminates the jungle, and she sees that this giant theropod dinosaur is moving around, and when it looks up at her in the cave, she sees that its eyes are glowing red with the moonlight. So it almost looks like a demon that's come out of hellfire and is hunting her. And the dinosaur is very sadistic. It is malevolently intelligent. Okay, yes, it's not a genius dinosaur, but she sees that it's hunting for sport, it's killing for sport, it's studying her behavior, it's kind of keeping an eye out for her, smelling for her, hunting for her. So she suspects that this apex predator is different to the other ones. And the fact that she has to find a way to also deal with this thing is really good, and you see her character evolution from that standpoint throughout the story, and that's what makes it really good, because she ends up befriending this one like mammal. It's like a weasel type of creature that ends up being like a pet dog to her, and it kind of builds a little bit of kinship. And she sees in like a jungle roaming point at one point that that little weasel creature and its other species is being hunted by this like devil pig, creepy pig looking creature that's trying to get them. And she has this sort of like feeling in her that she wants to protect it like a pet, and she decides that she's gonna go hunt down the pig thing and try to take it down. And you end up getting a similar scene to like what you see in Send Help when Rachel McAdams' character is fighting off the boar. It's a similar thing here where Sidra's using a spear. She's trying to kill this boar. This boar attacks her violently, gashes up her arm, and she's fighting it and piercing it with the spear. And this thing is basically so tenacious that it starts climbing up the spear even though it's impaled, to try to get her. And right at that moment, as she thinks she's about to defeat this pig-like thing and save her friend, the, mammalian weasel, at that very point, she sees that something like train tunnels skyrockets out of the jungle, the thick brush, and it's this giant 20-30 foot like Tyrannosaurus Rex, Allosaurus kind of theropod, and it snatches up the pig, snatches up her spear, and runs off with them, tunneling through the jungle. And she realizes at that point that she was literally one split second away from dying, and her whole tough facade, her whole facade that she builds up that, she's smarter than these reptiles, she's smarter than these creatures, she's innovative, she's powerful, she can survive. It all gets completely shattered and taken down because she was a split second away from dying, and she nearly got away just by luck. So it has an emotional toll on her. She goes to the cave, she starts crying, she starts breaking down emotionally, and their consciousness, which is the voice of her mother, who unfortunately passed away many years ago, is talking to her and telling her like, hey, you have two options out here. You can either lay down and die, or you can fight and be relentless. That's how that pig was able to survive, because of that tenacity. That's what you need to be in order to survive out here. It's just the unfortunate truth. And that's when she gets motivated and she decides that she has to go take down that apex predator, the dinosaur demon, because he's like a bully of the area. As long as she shows weakness and shows that she doesn't belong, he's going to keep targeting and hunting her. So instead of running away for all of her days, she decides, I'm going to fight back. And fight back she does. It ends up being an intense sequence where she ends up, at one point her backpack saves her because Demon basically bites down on her leg. It has 5 of the teeth basically pierce her leg and start shaking her like a dog and throws her up against a tree. And when she does that, her leg snaps. I mean, it is crazy stuff. So yeah, this girl ends up getting her leg ripped open and getting her leg broken at the same time by a giant Allosaurus that she has to fight off with makeshift weaponry and her smarts, because, when this thing chases her at the same time and she feels like she's about to die, the ground gives in on like the edge of like a cliffside and they both tumble and fall as they're fighting each other. She ends up getting like stranded by a river, and her wound, she's like worried is gonna get infected. She can't move for a few days. She starts hallucinating that Demon is walking around her and stalking her and still alive as she's out there by the river. He drops, carcasses in front of her and starts eating it in front of her. She imagines that the dinosaur is talking to her in a very sinister, growly kind of voice, telling her like, stupid little girl, you don't know what it takes to survive out here. You and I are together in a strange form of kinship. I will teach you how to give into your hunger and become a true apex predator. And she hallucinates that this thing basically almost demonically possesses her, enters her through her mouth in a liquidy form, and she ends up grabbing this huge like locust thing and starts eating it raw. Crazy stuff. I mean, she is going through it when it comes to fighting off these dinos, and there's a lot of other fun encounters like the artwork I showed you with this interior artwork. She runs into some cool dinos and stuff like that. So those are all the positives. But to get into the negatives of this book, and this is what really holds it back, there is way too much bloat in this story. There's so much padding. There's so much over description and over details of just her going out and getting food, learning how to cook, learning how to like hunt and gather. It just felt like there were so many things that didn't need to be focused on. And there were so many points where it felt directionless, like she just going from like one thing to another, one thing to another, one thing to another, point A to point B to whatever. It didn't feel like there was a sense of direction. And even her looking for her brother kind of goes back into the shadows. It doesn't become like a real driven point outside of her constantly just kind of repeating the same things. And that pissed me off because Tim Curran is a master of creature feature action. And out of a 180-page book, you get about like 15 to 16 pages of dino action, prehistoric action. A lot of the dino action is short-lived. And I'm like, no, dude, you're the creature feature master. There's no excuse for you not to have lots and lots of cool creature feature monster action. And it's not like he's doing original monsters. He's known for doing his own original stuff or supernatural creatures. Here you're doing dinos. We should be getting like Jurassic World type of scenes and stuff like that. And there should be way more direction when it comes to the story. And instead he focuses on just discuss the gathering and food and terrain analysis and all these effectively useless bloated details. And that to me just did not work. It drags on the page count. It feels like it's lacking a bunch of things. And there's some odd things in this book too, like there's in particular, again, it's not descriptive, so don't get freaked out. It's vague, but there's a couple points where like it's mentioned that she gets like naked. She gets like naked to go dive or like, whatever. It's just like why? It's just like why is that a thing? Not really needed in the book. Again, thankfully it's not descriptive, but at the same time, like why? And I don't feel like Sidra has as much personality as you would expect in a kids' horror protagonist. I mean, kids' horror is supposed to be fun, and this is a very depressing, dark, and gritty story. That's okay for adult horror, but it doesn't make for an entertaining read, nonetheless, even in adult horror. And especially for kids' horror, I feel like she needs to have more quips, she needs to have more personality, she needs to be showing off a little bit more, so that way we can get engaged with her, we can feel like we're rooting for her. And the entire book is written in third-person POV. I prefer my kids' horror to be in first person because we get that internal monologue. We get that idea that we're seeing the entire world and situation through the lens of the kid, and that makes it more powerful and personal. He doesn't do that, so then you're missing out on that relatability factor. So altogether, those negatives is what holds back the book, and it makes me disappointed because I know what this guy is capable of. I know what this guy can do. I know that this guy can do great things involving immersive atmosphere and setting, having fun, good characters, having cinematic action sequences throughout the book, more than you can imagine, and having amazing creature feature action, having all that stuff. And I was hoping for a good ending. The ending's kind of like a little bit of a cliffhanger, which the rest of the book being the way it is doesn't make it as satisfying. So the things that I usually expected out of him, he skimped out on. He didn't bring it for this. And I would be okay excusing that if this is like his second or third or fourth kids' horror book down the line. No, this is your debut. When it's your debut, when it's your premiere kids' horror book that everybody's excited for, especially me because we've been hyping this up, you can't be having all this bloat, all this padding, having a third-person POV, having a character which doesn't have as much personality, and skimping out on the goods, the meat, okay, that horror action, the scary scenes, all these things. Yeah, you have some of it, which makes it at least enjoyable in certain parts, and there's some like hints of good stuff here and there, but it's not just pieced together well, and that's what stops it from being a great to good book. So yeah, Cave by Tim Curran ends up getting a 7.4 out of 10 decent. That is my ceiling for it. It won't go higher than that. Is this the lowest rated book in Weird House Press? Yes. Is Weird House Press still the best modern kids horror series? Absolutely, because their weakest book is a 7.4 out of 10 decent. And they have two books, which are 10 out of 10s that I gave, but really they're 11 out of 10s, 12 out of 10s, because of how they compare to all the other kids' horror books in the genre. So they've still done a fantastic job. The average score of these books is still really high, but I would recommend that you guys check out the other 4 Weird House Press books instead of getting Cave. If you want to read Cave just because you feel like it and some of the things interest you or you're a Tim Curran fan, feel free and go ahead, but it's not one that I would necessarily recommend. And Tim, I know you're probably listening out there. I want you to continue trying kids horror, but all the things that I mentioned were a negative, just fix it. Have first person POVs, have direction. Don't just be writing all over the place and filling in things here and there as the story goes along. No, have a plotted out structure. Don't skimp out on creature feature action, horrific scenes, and all that stuff that's in your adult horror. Yeah, you have to tone it back, but you could still have plenty of it as you've done. And at the same time, I think another thing that would benefit you is a short story collection. I think a kids' horror short story collection would be great. You have a lot of different short story collection gimmicks out there, like Horrors of War, Alien Horrors, Dead Sea, Zombie Pulp, stuff like that, Atomic Horrors. Just have a kids' horror story featured in all of those different themes or gimmicks so they can feel like extensions of those short story collections. Make a movie theater kids horror story, make a mummy kids horror story. You had something that you teased in your book called Hag Night about this Snowden ski lodge in upstate New York where these kids are dealing with these snow ghosts. which are these ghosts of people who've got lost out at snowstorms and blizzards, who wait out there and wait for kids to get out there so they can bury them alive under the snow. It was a throwaway kind of flashback memory thing in the book that you didn't do anything with. You could do that. And I know that you incorporated ice vampires in some movie script you're working on. Rework that into the snow ghost story. Maybe the reason why people turn into snow ghosts are these ice vampires. You wrote your short story Lonely After Dark, which is about a snow-based ghost on a frozen over lake. I know you can do cool stuff with that. And he has a story called Please Stand By, which is an out-of-print story about these two adult guys who get this vintage old-school TV with tubes. And when they start playing around with the TV, they realize the TV is actually broadcasting an alien world that they can actually walk through. So things, they can go into this world and get transported to this alien world through this TV with these unique scarlet tubes that are plugged in. And at the same time, things can come out. You could have like a kid's horror story or a book based off of that as your own like alien horrors gimmick kind of thing, where a kid gets this old school TV from his dad and plays around with the channels and is ending up, being able to go to all these different alien worlds, so it feels like alien horrors or something. You can do plenty of cool stuff, but you need to have all of those solidified positive things in there, because Cave was kind of a mess and the positives helped it, but you really got helped by the fact that kids horror kind of gets like a little bit of a curve compared to your adult horror stuff. This book was flat out okay, man. And that's all I got for today. I'm disappointed by that, but hey man, you live and you learn. Don't let it demotivate you, Curran. Take another shot at a later point, but I have to be honest. So that's all I got for today. Hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, comment down below, and stay tuned for more content to come. Deuces.